Will you stop it?
Hello, how are you? I'm Steven.
And I am Danielle. We
We
are
are.
turning two into one. He's a robot today.
What's happening, peoples? You silly.
I'm silly.
You silly.
You playing with the people.
Okay. So today we won't be before you long.
Oh boy, as
That's
he
like
goes
it,
into
yeah,
your
yeah,
12th scripture.
yeah.
Okay, anyway.
I'm getting ready to close. Yeah, sure you are. We don't believe that. Okay. All right. So something that was on our heart over the weekend.
Flashbacks.
We were in a marriage meeting on Friday, and we were talking about being unequally yoked, and talking about how, and this is something that we've always talked about, is that we've never experienced a marriage that fell apart where one or both of the partners did not have a spiritual deficiency. And so we're talking about a Christian marriage. And so one of them had a spiritual deficiency. So somewhere they were unequally yoked. Now they might have started off equally yoked. However, but we'll talk about that. But but in those circumstances, so what made me I started thinking about is that ratio of 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, or where you begin to get out of balance, and so one person is here and the other person is here, and they okay here, but this other person is moving and moving and moving, and then all of a sudden you can't even see this person. This person is still in the same spot. They're like, leave me where I'm at. And so, but a marriage cannot exist like that. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it a couple times in the last few years, where married couples, they spent time together, but they didn't grow together.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do that, other than you're in each other's presence, but you're not using those times to become intimate. And I ain't talking about intimate. I'm talking about those things that are important to you, those
Right.
things that mean something to your heart, those things that God has laid on your heart. How much time do you spend talking about those things? How much time do you spend studying and in prayer and in worship to God? Because that'll also determine where you are in being unequally yoked.
I think also a lot of times what we see is in the very beginning, God said that He would make a companion for Adam that was his exact correspondence, or his companion. And so a lot of times when we get married, we marry because, oh, he's so cute, or he's so, it's the physical, not necessarily that he corresponds or I correspond with him. And so a lot of times we do marry people that are not suitable for us. And we don't realize that until after we're married, because I can show you the best parts of me while we're dating.
Yeah, that's what Pop used to say.
Yeah, I can show you the best parts of me while we're dating, but then when we become intimately involved, or when I can't go to my own apartment or you can't go to your own apartment, then you start seeing some things about me that I didn't reveal, or you didn't take the time to notice. And so we're really not as companionable, if that's a word, compatible. As we thought we were. And so what do you do in those situations as well? As Steve said, there are times when we do see couples growing apart, whether it be for they're not spending the time spiritually with God. It could be because we have children, which we've had 2 sets, and so we recognize that.
And that'll take a lot of time away from this union, because the kids, they babies, they can't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And so you end up spending your time taking care of those children. However, you have to be cognizant. You have to always be thinking that I still need to build this. I still need to work on this. Wherever we find that free time, that empty time, those little slivers, because sometimes that's all they are.
Right.
Are real slivers. They're not 2 and 3 day vacations. They might be like an hour.
Yeah.
With the baby being asleep and y'all sitting there just watching television, and y'all praying or y'all reading together. One thing that me and Danielle used to do, and she kind of stopped. Don't know why.
Why isn't always my
But
fault.
we used
But
to read
anyway,
together. And
yeah.
so we like an author,
Walter
Walter
Mosley.
Mosley. So we would
Yeah.
read Walter Mosley books together. So I would read a couple of pages or a chapter, and then she would turn around and
Yeah.
read. And that kind of gave us some time together
Yeah.
that we would spend together.
Especially when the children were growing, getting older, And then there's also the thought about, and I thought about this also about work-life relationship. Sometimes we have different goals as far as our careers are concerned.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, that could make us that expands. It could be
that could draw space
a
in there.
wedge. Right.
I have, I know people that they grinding, and they on the grind, and so their spouses are not necessarily on the grind like that, and so that drives a that adds space to them, because here his or her focus is over here and on doing this and building this, and here this person's focus might just be on the home and on taking care of the home, and if there's no balance there, and I'm not saying that you can't grind and have a good home life and this and that, but you do have to have balance in there.
Yeah.
But that's something that you have to work on. It's not something that naturally happens.
Yeah. I think that what we have to do is what we talked about last week was seeing the end at the beginning.
From the beginning.
So
where do you want to end up?
Exactly.
And then all of your actions should line up with that. And it shouldn't be unbalanced to either side. So here's a scenario. So if God is your focus, then that means that you guys should be praying together. That means that you personally should be spending some time praying by yourself about what God is laying on your heart. That should be times where you spending time in your word. What that does is that helps build you and build up who you are. What we've always done is that we've always read books together, but there have also been some books that we've read separately and maybe not together. That helps her build who she is.
Right.
She should want to be a better wife. You should want to be a better husband. And that may not happen in this together, but what may happen is what you're doing in your private time.
Yeah.
Sometimes, what you do in your private time is really what lays the foundation for what shows up in your public time.
That is so true. Yep.
What's
done in the dark is going to reveal itself in the light, and I hope that it is light what you're doing in the dark. So yeah, I think that that unequally yoked, we've experienced that quite a bit in other relationships. I think that we're a lot more careful, only because not that we're better than anybody, but it's one of those things where, because our focus is the family, so it's like always in our face. So we are always thinking about it. So for instance, if your focus is your children, then you're probably always thinking about your children. Or if your focus is your career, then you're probably always thinking about your career. So those are the things that pop up instantly for you. But for us, because our ministry is the family and marriage, we're always looking and watching and being careful in those areas and really focusing on God and what God has called us to do. And making him the center of it, so that he is the one that does the balancing. I know that when they used to have a scale years ago where you would put something on one side and then something on the other side, but then in the center is where the balance shows. There's a beam that tells you whether it's out of balance or in balance. And so God is that centerpiece that we use to say, okay, you're doing too much over here, or who's doing too much over there. And he's the one that kind of helps us. He does help us, not kind of helps us, but he's the one who brings the balance to our marriage and our children and our finances and the education and our careers as well.
Now, guys, I always, put the weight on your back. But you should be the ones who should be leading by example. And so if your wife is getting up in the morning praying and you snoring till 12 o'clock, something wrong with that. If she's reading her Bible and you're not, the only time you look at a scripture is on Sunday, something's wrong with that. She's building her independent relationship with God and you're not. And you're the leader. You should be showing her. You should be leading her. You should be able to feed her off of what God is giving you. But if you're not, then that means that 9 times out of 10, she'll end up feeding you. And then she'll end up leading you. And then you'll resent it, because we've seen it. You'll resent it because you didn't do what you needed to do to strengthen your relationship with God. It seems like she's like a spiritual powerhouse and you like a spiritual midget. And now you looking up at her like, wow, you making me feel inferior. No, you did not develop that relationship. And it's just like anything else. If there's a muscle and you work that muscle, it gets bigger. It becomes more functional. The function of it increases, and all of the different things you can do with it increase because you worked it. But if you don't work it, then atrophy sets in. And so that's what we see a lot of times in marriages. And you have your personal walk with Christ and God is atrophied. You might be moving along in your job and you might have all of this going on and clicking, but where is the relationship with the Father? Because He's the one that you want to build that relationship with, so that this relationship works and functions. So,
and then, ladies, you want to still make sure that, even if you are the purported powerhouse, that you're not lording it over your husband, because there is sanctification that God promised us if, there is an unsaved spouse. So we do want to, make room for the Lord to work on our spouses as well. It's not that we're the powerhouse. It's just that's where you are at this particular time. And we're not lording over, because I read more scriptures or I do this or I do that.
Because it's not about that. No, it's about building your independent relationship.
It's about
how, as a husband, you are responsible for taking care of your family, both physically and spiritually. And how you are able to take care of that spiritual is that you get to work working on the spiritual side. Just like on the physical, you get to work working on the physical side. Is that it?
That's about it.
All
so
right.
We have to work on ourselves. We have to put Jesus at the center of it all. And He's going to make sure that we're balanced. And so there are those times
if you listen. If you listen to Him. He's not going to lead you wrong. We can look back on our lives and truthfully say that since we've been with Jesus, since we've been walking this life out, any wrong turn we made it on our own. We didn't make it because He told us to make it.
Right.
And I think if you're honest about that, then that shows that you weren't always listening to Him. He was not always guiding you. But if you want to have a marriage ordained and empowered and impacted by God, then what you need to do is you need to listen to Him. You need to submit to Him so that He can take this two and make it one.
It's good.
And on that note, we're going to close.
Oh, boy.
All right. So remember, never give up.
Never give in.
And never let go.
See you on Wednesday.
Wednesday? What's Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Work on me Wednesday.
Work on me Wednesday. What are we talking about? I don't know.
Ooh.
What do you got?
Consistency.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. And how that will not just impact your relationships, but also other areas of your life. Can people trust you? Are you consistent in your behavior, in your mindset, and in the things that you do? Do you have regimens that promote health and wellness and promote good things? And so we'll talk about that.
It's good.
Wait till Wednesday.